Hello everyone, and welcome back to Let's Play Breath of Fire 2. Today is gonna be a bit different. We are going to see what happens when you are not prepared like I am, and you do not know how good Sten is, and you didn't give him a single drop of experience from the time you recruited him, and you have to go through his arc. And you also didn't realize you would have to equip him optimally, and so all you have is the treasure that you see in the basement. I mean, I have the treasure. I have better gear for him right now, but that's not the point. Joining me today is a special guest, Word on the Wind. How are you doing, friend?
Hello there. I'm doing alright. There is another reason why you would not use Sten, and that's my reason. I just don't like him.
Yeah, he doesn't give himself a very flattering introduction, does he?
No, not at all, no.
Yep, there he goes. Trubo didn't even have to look at him for that one. So, we're going to need to grind just a teensy bit. About 10 levels, you know, just a little bit.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Like, I think you can kinda sorta get away with, like, having him at, like, 13 or 14 if you're impatient and willing to risk the RNG like I am.
Really?
It's been a long time since I've done this, so don't quote me on exact numbers. But yeah, like, these little blobs here that give you tons of experience, like disproportionately unreasonable amounts of experience. I forget if these things show up anywhere else, but these are pretty much the answer to, oh, you didn't use the character. Well, shit. Here's your solution.
Now, me, as long as they were including 3 treasure chests, I would have, like, included, say, a helmet he could use? Maybe, I don't know, a shield he could use? Like the helmet, the moon mask that they have literally, like, 10 minutes away after you beat Trubo? No, that couldn't have worked?
Yeah, that's another possibility. Like, it's kind of a wonder that they give you the papillon or the butterfly knife, you know, whichever way you want to call it, in the first place. Because otherwise, like, what does he come with in the first place? It's just like the dirk or something.
I think it's like either the boy dagger or the Bowie knife, depending on your translation.
Yeah, something like that. Some useless piece of junk. And it's like, oh, okay, so now you're leaning on his magical expertise, which at the lower levels is non-existent.
Yeah. So, you may notice that this episode is 26 minutes, and yes, most of that 26 minutes is us grinding fight after fight, and then eventually giving Turbo what he has coming to him. And this doesn't make a lot of sense if you haven't played the game before. In fact, like, even Skyzo after the recording, like, we got done and he looked at me and was like, why did we do that, Theo? And I thought about it, and he's like, you know, it does kind of seem like I just spent 26 minutes grinding for no reason to a guy that hasn't played this. This is for therapy for all the guys that got stuck at Highfort, like my friend Word on the Wind did. I think I was lucky enough that I knew what was coming up in my first playthrough, but, you know, it's one thing to tell you that this game can screw you like this, it's another thing to actually see it. So, if you haven't played Breath of Fire 2, this may be the episode you want to skip, but if you have, you know exactly why we're doing this.
Yeah, there's a certain degree of, yes, my pain. Understand it.
Yeah. So, really the key here I aimed to get to level 19 before Trubo, and that was because that's the level where you finally outspeed him, and you need 2 Fireblasts in order to finally do him in. That was my reasoning. At other levels, he outspeeds you, and he has this like 50% crit rate too, and attacks twice, so I don't know how likely it is for you to win that RNG battle, but it's not terribly high, I can tell you that much.
It is pretty just like, alright, do you have enough health to weather him hitting you regularly, assuming no crits, like, for 3 straight rounds? With, you know, maybe even 4 if you're throwing in a healing item in there.
Yeah. Well, my issue is always surviving long enough to use a healing item.
Yeah, that's why I say, like, assuming no crits, like, if he doesn't ever crit, then it becomes, you know, immensely more manageable. If he ever does crit, then you're kind of hosed. It's like, alright, try again, idiot.
So, there are important benchmarks that you're looking for as you grind. Now, I already have, like, Fireblast and all that, because Sten was a good level before starting this episode. I just artificially lowered him to where he would be if I hadn't trained him.
Ah, yes. A true classic.
Yeah. And don't worry, I'll include the addresses in the description for if you guys ever get stuck in this situation so you could just hack your way out of it. But level 15 is when you learn Fireblast, and that's about the point where you can finally start surviving the Pharaoh mages and the Deathbringers and all that, or at least have a chance of doing so. Otherwise, you're likely going to just die.
Mm-hmm.
The mage mummies you can maybe defeat if you get really lucky and they don't use Ice Blast, but the Deathbringers, they're pretty much just a game over. Don't even try till you learn Fire Blast.
Yeah, that's just, alright, time to make a run check. Oh look, we got away through death.
Yeah, one way or another, you're not leaving that fight won.
Yeah, it really is just, you know, fishing for the little super experienced lines, and that's kind of it.
Exactly.
Like the rest of these things is like, okay, you can. It's not super worthwhile. It's like, okay, I guess if you're willing to invest into the idea, you could be doing township cooking and then just come in with a lot of those, like, the things that do the ice spell. I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but it's like you just come in and then just, like, hurl 60 of them and solve the problem that way, but that's a little ridiculous.
No, see, you can't, though, because once you start this Highfort scenario, you're stuck here.
No, what I mean is you do all of your preparation beforehand because you just don't want to use Sten that much. You just want to never use him, so you just prepare all of the cooking blasty items, so as soon as you come here, you can just come in here, no armor or whatever, just make him as fast as possible, and just blow up everything with, you know, the freezy murder cookies.
How long does that take, though, all that cooking?
I mean, if you're going to be cheesing the game doing all that stuff, let's be honest, it's kind of a drop in the bucket.
Well, I laid some ground rules near the very start of this LP to make things not too crazy, because otherwise what I'd do is I'd get the second tier dragons and I'd just feed a bunch of fast foods to Ryu and just have him kill everything before they move.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, if I'm feeling somewhat charitable towards the game at the time, it's like, what I'll do is I'll just get a bunch of the defense boosting things, load them up onto Cat, put her into slot 1, and then just be like, alright, you're my tank. Because she can taunt.
Yeah, she wants to be. Like, taunt even gives her a 50% counterattack rate. Did you know that?
Yeah. Like, I have, in fact, had valid situations where, bizarrely, it was the correct move to do that, because like, oh, hey, Nina's in trouble over there, because I actually like to use Nina. And, alright, what do? I know, I will have Cat taunt, and because I know Cat can take it when Nina can't, and oh hey, look at that. Cat took the hit, oh, there's a counterattack.
And there you go. Now me, I'm very weird. I use Cat as mainly a spellcaster at this point in the game. I don't think she gets a lot of weapon upgrades in the mid-game, so instead I buy a bunch of fire spices and just have her throw it on everything.
Oh, she's a magnificent item tosser. You want to use her, like, that's probably the most, effective way of using her, but, you're fine with just, hey, I'm just over here cooking up all of the infinite possibilities. So it's just like, alright, here's your stick, honey. Keep going.
Can you believe that that's your reward for doing badly at Kapitan? Everyone dying?
That's the...
The cooking carpenter.
Yeah. Like, if I were to rationalize that in a manner, regarding the carpenters, not the spells, because honestly, like, I don't care about the optimization of, like, how good, the tier 2 healing spell is. I'm going to save anyone anyway, because, fuck you, I'm doing that. That's how I roll.
Yeah, I can understand that.
But, what was I saying? If I were to rationalize that, it would be that you're going the extra mile, which means that you might not, need every conceivable advantage, or even want every conceivable advantage. So that's why each successive carpenter that is, available to you for going even more of the distance provides fewer and fewer mechanical benefits.
That and you can always just choose the cooking carpenter anyway, I guess. It's just the cooking carpenter is the only one that you're absolutely always gonna have.
Yeah, so it's like, having an easier time at the game is always an option.
Yeah.
So, rather than punishing you with making the game more difficult by locking out the most, the option of most possibility, instead you're kind of rewarded with, being able to restrict yourself if you so choose.
That makes sense. Yeah, I guess I can see that. By the way, did you notice that I got something called a skull brace from one of the Deathbringers?
I probably noticed it and then immediately didn't pay attention to it because, that involves watching Sten.
Fair enough. But it's called a skull BR in the old translation, and it's the subject of a lot of confusion. Like, even B-Siren, the mechanics guide that most guys use to look at the game, because it was the only thing we had until I had Nitrodon take everything apart. People think that what that does is it increases your spell crits to 50%. No, what it actually does, it actually makes the death spell more likely to hit you. Did you know that? Yeah.
You know what, that kind of tracks in like an old D&D cursed item kind of logic.
Exactly.
It's like, oh, you put on this thing. Oh no, I'm a fool. What's my punishment? Oh, you have a -5 to your death saving throws.
Indeed. And one of the other silly things is that, like, the way it does this, it does it not by multiplying the base spell's accuracy, it does it by multiplying the caster's bonus wisdom, because if you didn't know, all the spells in this game, they don't have a base accuracy, it's dependent entirely on how much wisdom the target has, and that's where most of it comes in. Some have no resistance, some will never be hit by it. And then the caster's wisdom only has like a small bonus on that, a very small one. Like, at best, it can be like 40% if you're reaching like 255 wisdom. That's what the skull brace multiplies. So even in the best scenario, it does basically nothing.
Oh, as a party.
Yeah. And the same thing goes with the Diamond BR, which is supposed to help with the death spell, but the effect is so minor, it basically, you may as well just sell it.
Right. It's one of those things where it's like, oh hey, do you have an accessory slot filled with something that's, you know, actually useful? No? Alright, well, here's this. Maybe it'll shine through in your darkest hour.
Except in slot 1, because the game's really buggy. It turns out, do you know... Okay, so you know how the fast shoes, they say they improve your initiatives, but they don't?
Yeah, you've mentioned that on a previous video, yeah.
Oh, you watched those. Cool.
I told you I watched them.
Okay, cool.
I kind of had to proofread them.
Oh, yeah. For those who don't know, Word on the Wind, he taught me a bunch of editing tricks when I was posting these around in different servers, and, you know, to do that, he watched through almost all of them. I didn't know.
Alright, that's twice there. She.
Crud, she, I'm really sorry.
At least it's clarified.
Yeah, she. But I know you watched a lot of the earlier ones. I didn't know that you'd watched a ton of the later ones, too. You must like them.
I mean, mostly I wanted to be able to, you know, discuss this effectively. You know, keep up with things. It's like, oh, hey, what's going on in this scenario? Oh, right, here's this, you know, antagonistic lady with a name that no one can agree on how to pronounce.
Not in the old translation, anyway.
Like even now, like you were saying, like her name is like Spuke or something. I was like Spuke, something like that, and I'm just like, I would read that as Spuke.
See, the thing is, like, I know a lot of Japanese.
Like I imagine, like yeah, there is probably like a hiragana element to it. It's just like, oh, like this is what they're going for here. But it's just like when I see it, you know, Romanized, it's just like, this is not how I parse it.
You know, studying Japanese has kind of ruined the way I look at a lot of names, to be honest.
Oh, I know that feeling a lot.
Indeed. But you know, back to the game, more than anything, more than the tedium, I think this was kind of an indictment on the split EXP mechanic in general, because, like, for all the problems this game has with character balance, I think you could solve, like, 80% of them if it just worked like in Breath of Fire 1, where you got to bring all your party everywhere, and they all just got the EXP. What do you think of that?
So it's kind of one of those things where there's some two ways about it, because that is certainly a perspective of the matter. On the other hand, when I first, you know, observed that, oh hey, the experience is being calculated differently when, you know, one of my party mates was down, my thought was happiness at, oh, everyone's getting the same thing, I'm not being penalized for having more people in the party. Because a lot of older games would do that, where, okay, here's, you know, an enemy that has a given experience value, and the more people you field against it, the more it gets divided evenly amongst the team. So strictly speaking, you know, by going with a full team, you're going to be having, you know, a given individual level slower. Now, granted, you know, you could, you know, kind of abuse this in a situation like this where you're just like, okay, I can reasonably take one person against the world and get what could functionally be seen as 6 times experience. But depending on how the game has or not 6, I'm thinking of wizardry. 4 times, excuse me. Now I'm like kind of like out of pace. Basically, like what it amounts to is like depending on how like all the experience gets calculated and mathed out, you know, in development, it may or may not, play out to being an advantage. And it's like, I understand that, like, the GBA version solution was to just, like, double all of the experience or something like that.
Yeah, triple the gold, too.
Yeah, so it's just like, okay. So, from that perspective, you don't really need to change the way that it gets divided because it's just kind of coming out evenly at, a good clip as opposed to, an acceptable clip here. Now, regarding, the people that you don't field at all, like that's a very, old RPG, kind of tradition, like, again, wizardry and like that kind of thing where it's like, oh, well, you didn't go out and experience anything, so why would you get experience? So it's like, I understand where, like, those decisions come from, and it's like, sharing that kind of out-of-party experience, sort of thing is something that, that got popularized more later on. Like, I think the first game I actually noticed it in was FF7. Like, it's, that's not the first game to do it, but that was the first one where I noticed that. Regarding, like, the difference between this and Breath of Fire 1, it is worth remembering that your entire team is with you the entire time. It's like, okay, you may not see them in the field in battle, but, they're over there. So they're still, watching, witnessing, and everything else. In this, everyone's hanging around a township. They're not involved in the encounters. And, you can't hot swap them into the party at any given time.
I just kind of wish the story had found a way to hot swap them, because, like, I mean, that makes sense, but then it's like, what are they all doing when I dive into hell and fight the final boss?
Play Pinochle.
No, actually, the game confirms what they're doing. They're just sitting around in town doing nothing.
Like I said, they're playing Pinochle.
Yeah. So, like, what you say makes sense. For me, it just seems like every time you introduce Split EXP, there's always some kind of problem that gets introduced with it. Like, for example, do you remember Final Fantasy IV for the DS?
That is actually on my to-do list.
Well, it wasn't as much of a problem in the original because level ups didn't increase your stats that much. It was mainly an HP boost, and I think it minorly increased your hit multipliers too, but like in the remakes, they increase all your stats as well, and the bosses just give gobs of experience, like massive unreasonable amounts of experience. You know what I'm saying?
So the opposite of 8.
Yeah, exactly. So, you're playing the remake, a bunch of guys are gonna at some point. Edward isn't. So, what I end up doing is, like, I almost kill the boss, and then I kill all the other guys on my team and then throw that Phoenix down on Scarmiglion and just have Tella absorb all the experience.
I mean, Tella, kind of checks out eventually anyway, so...
He does, but he sticks around longer than everyone else in the party. Like Palem and Porum, they... Dark Knight Cecil... Tella doesn't... rants against... So he's around for a while.
I'm sure all the people who haven't played FF4 are going to be very happy to be watching this video.
Oh, jeez. I've got to watch myself. Oh, boy. Well, you know what? I'll edit it out, and I'll fill it with, whatever.
Baby chocobos.
Yes, baby chocobos, exactly. Anyways, we're about approaching the end of this at long last. Finally, we're gonna get to level 19, Sten is gonna outspeed Turvoe, and then you're gonna see what happens then. But yeah, it's weird how long those last few levels take compared to all the earlier ones, isn't it?
Doesn't Sten have one of the slower leveling curves in this? I forget.
I think it's about average, let's say.
Okay.
Because he's not as slow as, say, Tapeta or Dees or Rand, but he's not like Cat either. Actually, speaking on that note, I think we finally hit level 19 here. Alright, Turvoe, time to make you pay!
Like, that's the advantage of one of the super ice cookies that just blows everything straight to hell, because you just come right in here and it's just alright, I win.
Ooh, a shaved ice.
That's what it's called, I couldn't remember.
Holy... Okay, well, you come in here without having trained Sten, just come in with a shaved ice, and there you go. No need for this video.
Again, only if you're willing to abuse, cooking cheese.
Well, no, see, you can buy them at Guntz.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Anyways, that would be all for this episode. Tomorrow we're gonna get the story back on track, and we're gonna go inside a queen. That's... How do I phrase that?
Not like that.
Okay, so there's a really fat...
We are going to go on a fantastic voyage.
Yes. In any case, this is Fiona Day Quester signing out. Have a nice day, everyone, and God bless you.
Bye.
Bye.